I call the Maplewood City Council work session to order on September 26, 2023. Mr. Nyber, roll call, please.
Councilmember Correll.
Here.
Councilmember Fockingham.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Homa.
Here.
Mayor Knapper.
Here.
Councilmember Maddox.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Nyber, would you please read item number 4?
Discussion of ordinance section 2-44 subsection 5.
Okay, so we talked about this ordinance during our, actually, we talked about this and we also talked about part of the charter during our retreat. I wanted to circle back and bring this before council so we can have another conversation about that ordinance and see if we would like to make, bless you, any amendments to that ordinance. I will tell you that I would like to focus, I would like for that ordinance to just have council is not permitted to get involved in the operation of the city. Like you're not permitted to interfere, which is what our charter says. But the part about cooperating with city employees, I'd like, that's just an example of what I'd like to see removed from that. And just wanted to have that conversation again to be clear what council would like to see as well. No. Yeah.
So I'm in agreement. I think that clearly the clause about council members and the mayor not interfering with administration of the city makes sense to be in that portion. But I do think there needs to be some sort of avenue for council and mayor to talk to department heads or city staff if it's necessary for various reasons. So I would agree that we need to have some mechanism for that. I don't know if there needs to be language specifically around that, but I would like to remove that from this portion as well. I was going to say exactly what Nick said, but probably not sound as smart. Good.
Which part? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we can put language in there that says, hey, look, if it's, obviously you can't interfere with city business, but if you have issues to deal with as a constituent, the city of Maplewood, sewer lateral, those kinds of things, that you're free to talk to whomever needs to be talked to about that. So, yeah, I mean, as long as that's clear, there's no problem at all. It's great.
I think my concern is, and maybe I just don't understand how this kind of lay out, but the charter trumps an ordinance, correct? And it's really the language in the charter that's, to me, the vaguest and least clear. So I get fixing the ordinance, but I feel like, and I know what's required to fix the charter. But does it solve our problems to write an ordinance or to reword the ordinance?
I don't think so. I think I will be honest with council. I think that because the charter that we're discussing is vague, the ordinance provides a clear understanding, if you will, but the best way to address this is really to address the charter. But we wouldn't be able to get to that until April. So we need something now.
Yeah, I'm not in supportive of it. I just worry, is it enough to accomplish what we're trying? Okay, so we will need to discuss doing that through a charter.
We need to, and glad you brought that up.
And I almost wonder if there might be, like, we're going to do some charter amending. We probably ought to do it all at once. So maybe we need to think about, are there other issues?
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of issues. Just going through and changing all the he's to something else would be one, but I'm not suggesting one. I just think.
No, you're right. I mean, okay, so in regard to the ordinance, council is, everybody is good with essentially asking Jackie to work with rewording this. Is that right? Y'all? Okay.
Yes.
Can I add, the only thing is, and this might be an administrative piece of details I don't have. I think like continuity of business. So, okay, there's a city manager that we should talk to for everything pertaining to the city, and I should absolutely never go to any of the departments with work or questions or anything. I'm with you there. City manager is unreachable because of, I don't know, they're out of state, and then there's the backup city manager, as I've seen, we appoint. What happens if that person is unreachable? What do we do as a community then if there's some kind of like, oh, 11-inch rainstorm again? I just want to make sure that, because this is saying we can't ever interfere, and I totally get you there. But what happens if the usual parties are unavailable through just happenstance situational issues? What's the policy then for the city of Maplewood to determine what gets done and how?
I think that is, so that's dealing with your operations, that's dealing with your administration. And so we would essentially have to see what City Hall has been doing and if there's a policy in place to answer that question. But that's the weeds. So, I mean, it's a good question, but that's the weeds. That's not our business essentially.
I was just gonna add on the, to the discussion about the charter and that Eric was talking about. I agree. I think that addressing the charter makes sense. I know there's various areas that could use rewriting. So I think it makes sense to me to prioritize what is most impactful soon and focus on those first for April. And then if there are other things maybe that we can't get done in time, if there's a lot, maybe it makes sense to prioritize and just focus on the one or two that are most needed.
So can we put a pin in the charter discussion and get to item 7? And the reason why is because I need to talk to y'all about like timelines for stuff, and I don't want to be in item 4 doing it. But yes, Nick, you're right, and we'll get that. All right, so Jackie, would you please, what?
No, what you all want me to say. I can't do only that. So I just want the disruption of city operations, but I think we need to talk about the violation of the chain of command without prior approval of the city. We need to talk about that, because Chris, I think what you were just talking about essentially was the chain of command. So
For me, when I'm thinking of disruption of operation, I'm thinking I go to Anthony and I tell Anthony, hey, Anthony, you need to have Jason send some public works folks out to my front yard and trim my trees. That is me interrupting the operation of day-to-day business. But if if I'm talking with Mr. Nyber and I say, hey, I have a question about some land that I think we may own. Is it okay if I talk to so-and-so? He's like, yes. So then I can do that without having to CC him on an email, or that department head can contact me, and we do not have to have a middleman in between that. So you all let me know, but that's how I think. The next person may not think that way. So I think we got to be mindful of what do we want to specifically say. If you all want the chain of command still in there, because I think that was the issue. The chain of command and the way that it was interpreted.
So, okay.
So for example, when Chastity had a question about her sewer lateral, she wanted to ask that directly to Mr. Watkins, Jason Watkins, right?
Well, he actually came, so it was a whole little, like, I said something up at city council, I had gotten that same day of the meeting, I had gotten the plumber to come and do the camera, and he was like, the plumber actually told me the city handled it. So here's your information, here's your disc. send it to the city, we'll email it to you. So at that point, I was like, who do I email? Do I email Anthony? So I just had my husband email, I didn't want to get in trouble because I read that and knew that any little thing could get me in trouble, so I didn't want to do that.
You were instructed by Mr. Reese to
Yes,
CC him.
to CC
And-
him the next day, because Jason came to my house unknowingly. He was there for a neighbor. I was outside and I thought he was there for me because we all had orange cones in front of our house at the time with Fred Lou. So it just happened that, and I had to tell Michael that I had a conversation with Jason because I didn't want neither Jason nor I to be in trouble when it just stands to happen.
Right. So essentially, like, to me, that is not interfering with operation of city business when you're just asking questions about your sewer lateral. Or if I want to talk to the police, I should not have to CC the city manager to do that because I'm talking to them about something that pertains to me. I'm not sure how to put that verbiage in, but essentially it's like if council wants to talk with department heads about matters that concern them as an individual or their property or their family, I think that we should be able to do that without having to CC a city manager or having to seek permission from the city manager to do that. I just don't know how to write. I don't know how to.
Do we need to add clause is probably the wrong noun, and I apologize, Jackie. Do we need to add something like, with full understanding that no preferential treatment, placement, et cetera, will result from any conversation? Because like, it's one thing to say, hey, what's going on with I have a question about my sewer lateral. It's another to say, you need to prioritize mine over anybody else's. And I understand that's what we specifically want to avoid.
That goes to say you need to prioritize mine, you're now interfering with the operation, right? But if you're just like, put my name on the list, that's not interference. That's just something that someone would do if they were a resident. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know how to be so specific in the wording when we're talking about this, but maybe, I don't have to be. Jackie, can you kind of understand what we want?
I understand what you're saying. I don't know how we write that for me that. So language I'm thinking about is normal business, but then you have to think about, well, if I was a citizen and I need this, would I be calling police chief or would I be calling desk and asking to make a report? That's just one tiny example. So what is the normal first? Is it looking up the phone call? How do we interpret that? But that sort of language, I'm thinking like, you might think about.
I don't know what other folks do, but when I have an emergency, I actually call the non-emergency line because I'll get to the police faster. So I don't call the chief. I call the, that's what I do. So, but I don't know, like, 20 years from now, and there's different folks on this council. I don't know what they'll do, but maybe we don't try to govern the future like that.
I'll have a suggestion on language. I would like to see something in the ordinance similar to, it's permissible for the mayor or city council to contact city staff or employees who report to or supervised by the city manager without contacting the city manager, as long as it's not to interfere with the administration of the city. Or something similar that you would, Smith.
Do we need to specify though, like regarding their own property, like, is it regarding their residential concerns?
I think that,
Could you write it
Yeah.
in such a way where I'm gonna really fumble all over this, but where basically you say that a city council person would have the same rights and privileges in terms of contacting city employees as a citizen who also needed the same service? I'm all over that, but you know what I mean? Like, can we just make a comparative and say, you have the right to call 911, you have the right to call Public Works, just like anybody else does. Should exceed that, should be less than. Well, how we word that.
That might be a little-
I mean, the most like efficient way to get the point across.
Yeah.
Yes, ChatGPT right this one.
Okay,
I don't know.
if there's a consensus. I'll write it. I personally like, but yeah, it's up to you all.
If you can turn that nonsense into some coherent thought, A, I'll be impressed and B,
I don't know, Ryan, good.
Yeah, that's that.
I'll figure out. So just for clarification, we're not, are you requesting that in other sections of this ordinance? No,
Yeah, my focus was just number 5.
but are you asking that I change?
Oh, of that.
Yes.
Yes, so council, you just chime in, please. I'm asking that cooperating with city employees in the violation of the civil service code and personnel policies be removed. And then that violation of the chain of command without prior approval be removed. And then the disruption of city operations stays. And finally, what Eric just said is included or added to that.
So basically, you're kind of loosely saying mayor and city council shall not disrupt city operations, et cetera, and have the,
services.
as the same rights and accessible or whatever of a standard Maplewood, or not standard, but different
Yes.
Maplewood constituent.
Yeah, exactly. And you want that in section 5? Yes.
Yes. Yes, please.
So disruption or direction. of city operations. I think of disruption differently. I'm just curious.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Nyber, item number 5, please.
Ordinance creating pay scale for the position of city manager.
I mean, should we have a lower end? You know, I mean, should we just make the top scale the ordinance and don't worry about a lower end?
I just thought a range of, I thought that too, but I will tell you the reason why I thought that is because I'm coming from my own experience. So if your experience is different, I definitely want to hear about it. But just with the federal government, they had their pay scale starts at a 1 and then goes all the way up to like a step 12. Okay.
Just to note, it's the same for city employees, there's a range. So it would have.
Now, what if we wanted to give them a bonus?
outside of.
We can't do it, y'all. We can.
Hypothetically, it will be doable, it's start line. Financially.
I think planets would have to align.
Right, but
No, look, Jackie, will you please tell us why we can't do it?
But the way it works is you can't award someone for prior work done. You have to pay them for future work to be done. So I included language in here. Try to accomplish what I think is your goal to allow an additional financial incentive. But I don't think we should write that into the ordinance, but it would, to be valid, I think have to be written into the agreement. there would have to be some statement how they can achieve this financial incentive and that it would be for future work. But it can be based on identifiable metrics that have been met by that.
Is it an employment law thing or is that to do with city management? Nobody can get a bonus? Okay.
Government employees at every level in the city.
That looks great.
Yeah, we're good. So we will, if there's no one that would like to see any changes made to this, then we will see this on the October 10th council agenda. All right, item number 6, Mr. Nyber.
Discussion of creating affordable housing on property owned by the city of Maplewood and located at 3233 South Big Bend.
So I will tell you all, I was extremely excited to learn about this property. And then I thought to myself, I should ask if there are any contracts on this land. And there's a contract on this land. And so we will need to get some more information before we can really dive into specifics regarding this area. Excuse me. However, I really would just like to have a general conversation with you all about affordable housing. I know you all have been hearing me talk about it for over 2 years now. And I'm like I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm not going to let it go. But I just wanted to know if we are able to get land here, is everybody on board with us developing it for affordable housing? And that affordable housing is either going to be workforce housing that focuses on maybe young folks in the workforce, or young families, or older families. Or it is going to be, or it will be affordable housing that is geared towards elders. So what say you all, just before I really continue down this flight?
It's a yes from me. All of the above.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about this opportunity is it's right by mass transit. And I think the more we can tie in some of our development for, workforce housing, that we can tie it into transit, that's what we ought to be doing. So I'm very in favor of.
I'm in favor. Agreed.
Agreed.
Do we have any like volume expectations? I'm sorry, I don't have a spatial reference of how big that space is to think about how much could fit there.
It's big.
It's parking lot that you can see. If you go past Laura, and before you turn into Sun, that huge parking lot that's up there is the product.
Okay, because the only thing I was thinking about is prior to living in this awesome community where I used to live, there was a large development that was planned, and then the school district was like, we can't absorb that many more kids. So if we just thinking about a lot of families and small children, we just need to check.
I have.
Perfect.
So I talked to Dr. Jameson, maybe a year and a half ago. And I let her know, because I was told when I came in, when I was talking about, and I was newly elected, and I was talking about developing this housing here, that would be a contention with the school district. But that's also a reason why I've made sure that we have a very good, strong relationship with the school district. And so the school district knows what I was trying to do, and now our council is focused on doing, and they're okay with it. So we're good on that end. We just gotta obtain the land. So like I said, I just want to repeat again, there is a contract on this, and we're going to get more information. Thankfully, Anthony Traxler let me know. He gave me the heads up and was just like, yeah, I need to do more research, but there's a contract. So we'll talk about this again at a meeting in October for sure, either the 10th or the 24th.
Sorry, when you say contract, you mean?
May I suggest that if we're going to have that conversation, that it be.
Yes. I don't plan for it.
Well, it's-
Agreed. We haven't done that, have we?
No.
Okay, so no. So when I say, when I say it's gonna be on a future meeting, I am. Okay. I know it will be a closed session because of contract. Yes.
I'll withdraw my question.
Okay, thank you.
Woo, those sunshine laws. Okay. Gotta abide, man. All right, so I think we're good on that one. Mr. Nyber, item number 7, please.
Discussion of amending the legal department in the city's charter.
Okay, so before we dive into the memo that I presented to you all, I want to touch on what our colleague Nick was talking about. You have a very good point. There are a lot of parts of the charter that need to be addressed. I think that we just need to have a discussion on the bandwidth of the council to address it. What would you all like to do? Everybody look at the charter and take a section and then come back and say, hey, this is my suggestion for it. Look at it and look at the charter and say, okay, I think we all come back and say, okay, this is a priority. This is something that we've got to see on the April 24 ballot. We could do that. You all let me know what your bandwidth is, but I will say that there's one thing that I think we need to have on the ballot, and it's the residency requirement for a city manager. We have got to take care of that.
What do you
When
mean?
I say take care of it, I mean, like, I think we should get rid of it. I think we should get rid of that requirement.
Oh,
What do you think, Sean?
I'll argue with you. I
Okay.
don't think we should.
Yeah, let's have the conversation, because if not, then, that's not a matter for the April 2024 ballot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've always had the position for the city manager specifically to live in the place that they manage. And there's lots of advantages to that. And obviously some disadvantages because people don't want it, but if you're making decisions about the city that you live in, I think you have a different reference and frame of mind than if I were to live out in O'Fallon, Missouri and run the city of Maplewood. So I'm pretty opposed to changing that. If we want to change, like we'll help provide housing, or we can work that into contracts or something like that until you can find something more permanent. I get it, but yeah, I'm open for discussion, but I'm pretty hard set about the city manager living here.
Well, I just gonna say, I think the hard thing for me with that issue is the absoluteness of it, right? So it's an either or, and if it's, yeah, you can live outside the city, then you could live in O'Fallon. To me, that's out of touch. Whereas if they lived in Brentwood, I'd be like, okay, they're in the community, they got it. So, yeah, I've been wrestling with this issue too, for that very reason.
I'm not opposed to maybe a 10-mile radius or something.
Yeah, I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know what's appropriate, but I just got to thinking, like, you live in Richmond Heights, you got the Maplewood thing down. You understand what we're doing. But if you live in O'Fallon's a great example. If you live 25 miles out to the west, you have a clue. The culture's different out there. This is as a former St. Charlesian, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm open to anything that doesn't restrict someone to being in Maplewood. And the reason why is because it is difficult to get housing here. When we had this, initially, I am sure that it was not difficult to find housing in our community. I'm sure that housing did not cost 500,000, right? As the first offer. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, the difficulty that it is to get into our housing here. And then yes, you could rent, but if you see yourself as the city manager and you're in you're in this space, you're like, I want to retire here, and you have like 20 years before you retire. I'm not sure if that person would want to be a renter that entire time. I just don't know what the future would look like for another city manager. And so I'm definitely open to a radius, but just for us to say like, you have to live here, it's just difficult for us.
What do other communities do for city managers?
They don't, there's some,
If I may,
yeah,
is there a state or Missouri legislation with city manager that you have to reside in the city? Okay, because I know other city managers, like the city, some neighboring cities, when it's a city manager, they have to live in that city. And I thought that was my understanding, and I could be in error in that, but something with the city manager, something legislation that requires you at some point to live in the city, what's a city manager position?
I wonder, go ahead.
I think in those situations, they give them a certain amount of time. So you have 6 months, you have 1 year to make your. So are we still gonna keep that? Are we gonna,
Right now, because we're just in discussion.
Oh, well, he has to live here, but give him a certain.
I feel like we limit ourselves if we say that they have to live in Maplewood. Maybe somebody wants the job, but they're not sure what part of Maplewood they want to live in. Do they want to live next to an elementary school? Do they want to live next to a high school? Is there a home big enough for their family? I think we limit ourselves by that, but
If it's a state law that requires a manager to live in the municipality, then we're done. We're done. You know what I mean? But then my question would be, okay, is that the same requirement for a city administrator? Because I know that Brentwood has a city administrator, not a city manager, and I know that there are different responsibilities for that position. So so it looks like we just need to do more research on that.
It is a statute, and it says, the council shall have the discretion to require the city manager to reside in the city as a commission. Except in counties with a charter form of government, the city manager shall be elected as a city as a commission.
Well, that conversation is done.
Do we have any?
You still get some discretion about timing and stuff like that, and certainly we could also include into our salary range. The potential for, since we're becoming gentrified, maybe there's some language we can put in there that will provide some assistance for housing.
I just did the math and, if you buy a $500,000 home, which is not insane in Maplewood anymore, that salary just barely, if you do the 25% rule, is barely enough at 150 grand. That's insane to think about, but that is true. So I think we do have to think about that. Probably for another day.
Yeah, I mean, we can always modify this ordinance too as well. So, but
I think time is a big one too, because that's the big thing. Trying to find an opening in this town in 6 months could be tough.
oh, I mean, there's always places that are for rent, certainly.
Yeah, that's.
And they're not cheap, but they are for rent.
Okay.
So you all tell me before we dive into the memo. What's the bandwidth that you have? Yeah, that's it. That's my question.
I
the
think
bandwidth.
that if we want to make a couple changes for April, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I honestly think that since this charter is so old, that we should develop a commission, a charter commission, to go through it. Could be a couple council people in the community, whoever, to go through it and say, this is what needs to happen.
That'd be
You know what I'm
great.
saying? And it'll be a longer process, but then we can go to the people and say, great, we did a charter commission. This is what they came up. The council agrees with it. You can read their changes, vote on it.
I agree.
That allows us to get some expert opinion. Like I worry. I think there are things I would catch that are like sort of my bailiwick, but I could read through that thing and just not even notice that something's weird. Or if somebody's got a little experience, we could bring in some expert.
Yeah,
We
and
could.
and the council probably doesn't have the bandwidth to
I don't.
tackle something like that. That's a pretty big,
I don't. And I think that with us having a charter commission, making sure that while we reach out for experts that may not be in the Maplewood community. We still have community members on it. So yeah, that's great. Okay. Would you all like for me to put that on work session in October? And and I'm asking, I guess, yes.
Yeah, to discuss who would be
Yeah.
on it or what the requirements would be.
Yeah.
Well, it is statutory. Okay.
Don't believe that I need to go back and look. We even have to have the appointed judge.
Okay.
It's quite a robust process. So what if it's all right with you, Mayor, maybe at the work session, I could come back. Explain the process or provide all of them.
Yeah.
Get started. Goodbye.
Yes, please.
In 1980.
Oh, it does. I mean,
Yeah, early 80s. I can't remember that.
Talking about me. It was 78.
Ooh.
Fourth night. Okay. Yeah. All right, so now we are on. Yes. So now we are on,
The memo that I provided to you. So I have been talking with you all for probably about a year about amending the Department of Law. And the reason why I wanted to amend it initially was because I wanted to include a defense attorney, if you will, but that defense attorney will only focus on traffic moving violations. So no speeding tickets or anything like that. It's really insurance, driving without insurance, driving on a suspended license, driving on a revoked license, assisting them. And the reason why I would like to see those folks receive assistance is because more often than not, they are indigent. And so if they are driving without a license, and they come in, they don't understand the process of municipal court, they're representing themselves because they can't afford an attorney, then they may take an offer that causes them to have points on their record. And the more points that they have, the harder it is to get their license. And then they're going to continue to drive because they need to work, but then they're going to get caught again. It's just going to be horrific, and it keeps them trapped in the cycle of poverty. And so if they have someone that they can talk to about whatever offer they receive or ways that they can find a way so they're not getting those points, I'd like to see that. And so I spoke with Michael about like the pay, and we would not have to increase our budget to pay like the prosecutor and the defense attorney. We could be able to pay them with the budget that we currently have for legal. So there's that. And then if you'll see there's some other changes that while I was in there, I was like, well, let's change this too. So you'll see those in there. Do you have any questions, or you want to discuss anything in the memo that I presented to you all?
I'm just impressed that we could do it without spending more money. How is that possible?
So currently, so what I was told by Michael is that right now, we pay the prosecutor $2,200, somewhere around there. And when I spoke with our municipal judge, Honorable Miller, she told me that they meet for court, or they have court maybe 3 or 4 times a month. And so I believe that we will be able to find 2 people that will be willing to accept $1,100 for those 3 or 4 court dates. I believe we can find that. So that's why I say it's not going to cost us. Yeah.
Is there some type of scale? some type of proof of income that an indigent person would have to show to get these services?
Yes, they would. So what I would like to do, and I'm gonna have to lean on Jackie for this, but what I would like to do is whatever the state of Missouri determines to be indigent or whatever we see our public defender offices in Missouri using as like their indigency scale, that's what we would use. Yeah. But again, I would lean on Jackie for that. I do not have expertise in that.
Do we have an idea of how much revenue we earn off of violations like this?
We do. I don't have those specific numbers, but we do have that information, and we are not earning the money that we once earned because it's against the law. So that's not an issue. We don't earn a lot of money like a lot of municipalities used to maybe 2 decades ago.
I don't know a number, but I remember looking at it the last time we did budget and it was tiny. It's very little.
Yeah.
It's not gonna hurt anything.
Just a clarifying question. The defense attorney services, would that be for Maplewood residents who have this situation or anybody who has this, the charges while physically in Maplewood?
While physically in Maplewood.
Thanks.
So the charter change would be to make all those people, the city manager wouldn't bring it to the mayor would with the consent of council. Right.
Well, I present you with the person in my capacity or the mayor does, but the council.
So to make these charter changes, is there something different in making a small change / amendment versus the commission? So we can make little tweaks.
Yeah, I'm all good.
All right. Thank y'all. Okay, well, then let me, before I do that. So Jackie, what next steps needs to take place?
I need to know what you want. And I kind of have that, but I don't think I have that for the defense. I think we've talked about before that one of the issues of the defense attorney is ethically, the lawyers have to understand who they're representing and the scope of what their representation is. And I think to get this person, they are going to have clarity, whether it's written into our charter or not, of what the scope of their representation is. Is the representation to be available in court and speak with someone, or is it like if I'm appointing an attorney for someone, I have to represent them at that court night, the next court night, if they want to file, if they want to put certified document, and so I want you to, I guess I would suggest that you should think through whether that scope and what that scope is, and whether that's something that you want to bring that charter.
Do we say the scope is as outlined in the ordinance and then write ordinance? That is true.
Yeah, yes, I guess part of what I'm thinking is if you're gonna make the change. I would suggest we should know what we're trying to accomplish. It would be helpful for me in writing, if I know what the end result is.
In your experience, because you've done work in a municipal court, so in your experience, how far have you seen a driving without a license or driving with a suspended license go?
Oh, they could appeal.
I know they can, but what's your experience? What have you seen?
They have been, it's not typical. It depends on if they're getting the recommendation that is an amendment, to illegal parking. I can tell you in our court, as long as, I don't think we're in the neighborhood, as long as, in almost every circumstance, I think that it has wrong, as long as they get their license reinstated, they get amended, so it's already not violation. Sure they do that first. I think the trickier situations are, are we limiting it to the minor? Are you limiting it to a specific type of violation?
Yes,
So that just happens?
yes,
And does that include the DUI?
no. So it does not include like reckless driving, speeding, DUIs. It is supposed to, my focus is driving without a license, suspended, revoked, uninsured, and expired tags. So it's very narrow.
From my experience, all of those are situations where
And so my concern is, this is something that I do want to control. 20 years from now, do we still, you're not here. We're not here. And I'm being mindful of that person 20 years into the future. And so that's why I'm like, okay, let's talk about this now. Because right now with the judge that we have, I know that with the city prosecutor that we have, I understand that, but there's no guarantee that Lewis and Rice will always be the attorney as the prosecutor. Okay.
I'm just thinking, how do we write this? Are we writing it to say that if the city defense is only, for tickets? Are you having a classification? What's the scope?
So my memo, I think my memo gave the scope.
Yeah, there's an et cetera in there that I'm not sure about.
Pretty much that realm. I am not licensed here, so I do not know, and I did not do the research to see what additional non-moving violations there were. But essentially, non-moving violations that are in the scope of expired tags or no insurance, whatever else, that's the extent of it.
So would it cover, it would not cover things like speeding?
Correct.
Classification for those kinds of like DUI. I mean, DUI can be felonious, but I mean,
This is really the only or there's what they call a minor traffic violation, which is essentially a two-part violation. So it's not anything. Uninsured is not, it's 4 points. If you were seeing a speed zone, it would, or a school zone, it would not be a traffic violation. But that's sort of, there's non-free violations, there's minor traffic violations, and then there's other buckets. So that would include your driving while suspended, leaving time, fleeing a police officer, failure to yield, emergency involved, etc.
I mean, I wonder if we're, including something like no proof of financial responsibility. I mean, Jackie's saying that if they show us, or they show the court proof of financial responsibility within however many days it is till their next court date or till they're given to show that, then they don't get the points. I feel like we're getting into like a hairy situation there, because if somebody with no insurance hits me, a Maplewood resident, and you're defending them in court, but then I have to go and hire an attorney to sue this person to be made whole again.
Those are different. Those are different courts.
but you're gonna give them a they're gonna have a defense for their not having insurance, and then I have to go and then sue that person, whatever, it's just, it feels like.
I hear you, but again, what I'm saying is we are talking about what we have right now. So let me back up. First, the Ferguson Commission talks about transforming municipal courts. So that's first. So this is where this idea stems from. Second, I caution you all to not just focus on what we have right now. What we have is great. I made sure that what we have is great by starting with the appointment of our municipal judge. When I'm done and gone, and we have someone else here, and they are more conservative, if you will, you're not going to see what you see right now. And so what I'm saying is, let's be mindful that we in this council right now cares about people. If we are concerned about a defense attorney assisting someone with a particular violation, we can talk about that. But my focus is not DUIs and speeding and reckless driving and leaving the scene of a crime. My focus is making sure that poor folks can still drive their car to get to work. And they can do that after we're done serving our community and another council is here.
With all due respect, as a lifelong resident who has just told you all that I've had traffic tickets here, I have been on the other side of that and not been able to necessarily afford the fine, went to driving school, got the points taken away because I did what the court then asked me to do. I feel like we're just getting into a tricky area here.
I respect that. I just respectfully disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I really support what you're trying to do, Mayor. I like the idea of this. I understand what happens when someone's caught driving without a tag, right? And then they have to go to court and then there's fines and they're not really sure how to navigate that and maybe get themselves in a situation where they don't make the most informed decision. They're just trying to make that short-term gain, not that long-term decision that they could, I would assume, get some advice, some legal advice to make sure that they're just making the right decision in that moment and not just trying to do what they feel they need to do in that moment. While I do see that it says et cetera, is there, maybe something we can just clean up and remove that et cetera? Because I feel like it does kind of lay out what we're looking to do. And I think it's important. And I really do see the long-term effect of not being that municipal court that is putting people in worse situations than they were when all they're trying to do is, like the mayor said, is go to work and just get by. Everything's expensive. So I support what this is doing.
I hear what Councilmember Maddox is saying too. And I think what I'm coming back to is I'm being asked to weigh in on a situation where I have no data. I don't know what kind of non-moving violations people are getting pulled over, ticketed, whatever for. And I don't know what else we could be overlooking that's in the et cetera. I completely get your point. We're looking for situations where no one is at physical risk. We're not talking DUI, speeding, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a wide range of stuff that people can get nickeled and dimed and dinged on. And I think I don't have a frame of reference for what that looks like, especially within our community in the past or currently. So I think that's where I have a gap in my own knowledge.
And at what point is the city not financially responsible anymore? So if the defendant decides they don't like what the defense attorney has been able to negotiate for them, and then they certify it to circuit court, that costs money. At what point are we not responsible anymore?
We don't have to represent the person because we've had this conversation before. When I say we, I'm talking about Jackie and I and previous council members. Jackie had actually suggested like, okay, maybe it's not representation, maybe it's just here's advice that we could give to the person. Excuse me. And we can do that. We can talk about that. I want to touch on something that you said, Krista, about like the data. I will tell you all, I'm focused. I always draw back with experience. I used to be a former public defender. And so my experience is what I had listed. When I put et cetera in there, it was because, again, the second time, I'm not licensed here. I also don't have the bandwidth to do the legal research. And so when I said et cetera, it was like anything that is like related to this, right? If there's nothing else, if I listed everything, which is my goal, then that's what it is. That et cetera really was for us to have this conversation. And then honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you all. We have a city attorney. I like to lean on her. I like to ask her, hey, Jackie, what's this? Because I think that's the smart thing to do. So I really don't want us to get caught up on the et cetera. I hope that you're able to understand my explanation on that.
Legal aid of Eastern Missouri, if they are not happy with what's happening in Maplewood Court. So I think they can, but what I will tell you is that, and maybe more specific, is that our ordinances do allow for the court to appoint a public defender, but only if they're subject to jail. And that's the statewide.
Jackie, I have a question for you also. What is the difference between a public defender and municipal court providing advice versus representing a client?
So, for providing advice, you are there, right? Like, functionally, they're the same thing. But as a lawyer, sometimes we have limited scopes of our representation. So the scope of representation might be, I can handle it, I can advise you on that, but not this. You have to be upfront if you're limiting the scope of your representation. So I think when I was suggesting that to the mayor, my thought process was, if you want someone that's sitting in the courtroom that they can ask questions about their tickets, etc., that's different than appointing someone as your lawyer / public defender without limitation. If there's no limitation, then as an ethical responsibility, I have to represent them through every avenue. So let's say they went to appeal the case, I would have to appeal the case unless there was that upfront.
So if we wrote this to where it was really defined, it's these 6 in municipal court. Good enough? Because it's upfront, I can get advice on 6 tickets.
But the question is not. So, are you handling it just in the courtroom?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Could you write that in? Could you say, I can give you advice in court on these 6 topics? In this court,
Yeah.
in this, thank you.
I think you could limit it if that's what you want. If that's what you want.
Because what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
what
I'm in
hearing
favor of
is
that.
You want, when people come in, because I'm thinking back to my experience, which happened in the city, and you're right, man, I sat there for an hour waiting for my turn, and every single person was a financial one. It was driving on a revoked license, mostly no insurance. And occasionally there was a guy that looked like me that would walk in, and he always, without question, had a lawyer. And there's a side guy in St. Louis City Court that you go up to and talk to that's not the judge, and it gets fixed and you're done. You don't even have to talk to the judge. And I just remember thinking, oh man, that must feel really like you would feel small if I was not represented. So like, I totally get what you're saying. And I think if we can draw a box around, these are the financial impact tickets, right? And we know which ones they are. We can identify them however we need to identify them and limit it to that. I like that idea because that is, the deck is stacked against you. When you walk in, I know nothing about the law. There is an expert, a lawyer right there. There's a judge right there and me, and you feel very small. So I love the idea. I'm very supportive of doing that. And to me, it seems like ticky tack, like we just got to draw the square the right shape.
Yeah, I agree with Erica 100%.
Great.
Yeah, I would not want the defense attorney, the public defender to leave municipal court. I don't want them to have to follow that person I don't want that. I just want it here.
We just need somebody to lean over, be like, take the fine, not the points because, or vice versa, or what, I don't know what the advice is, but I think that's really all we really want, because I think it's easy to get in there and
Yep.
which the best. one.
Jackie, but if we had a public defender here, they can be an advocate for anybody who walked up, for the scope that we gave them. They could walk up and say, great, you know what? We'll reduce this to, littering on the front lawn. They won't get any points, but here's your fine. I mean, they would be perfectly within their right and legal right to do that, right?
Yeah, they would be acting in the scope of whatever. And again, within their ethical. duty.
Right.
I will tell you, we looked around. I mean, the same thing, it's not right or wrong, but it's not being done. And so
Wait a minute.
I guess there are a lot of attorneys have ethical responsibilities, and no matter who this person is, they have to follow their ethical duties, right? And so those are whatever we put in the chart. That what they're being limited to is within their ethical responsibilities.
So those statutory limitations don't absolve you of some greater Hippocratic oath style. Well, I'm not entirely joking, like, you can't tell it out when you treat these.
Yeah, right.
This is the same kind of issue, so there's a larger philosophical issue that we may or may not be able to.
That's why it's so important to have the scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think you said it, someone said it, it's essentially the scope is a boundary. And so you're just boundary setting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One person I brought it by one other.
I just have another just kind of really very basic, probably dumb question. I don't know the volume we see in our municipal court for these kind of stuff. Is there any point at all at just saying Maplewood has a public defender here in an advisory role for these situations? No questions asked about income? Like do we have such a low volume that we don't even put you have to fall within an indigent category?
That's a good question. I don't know that either. Jackie, where would we get that data? From the clerk?
I'm thinking too about times in my life where like I've been within a few $100s of not qualifying for certain financial aid. And it doesn't like functionally my life isn't any better just because I'm above the threshold.
Yeah. All right. All right.
I think for a lot of us, data around this would help. Because I do think that stuff gets out of our municipal court so rarely in these cases that it would make more sense if we had that data, but I'm going based on what I think I know and not the data. So the data would help.
And how many times do we let a person do this though? Like how many driving while no insurance? How many driving with no license? I mean, we all have to follow the rules. So and how many times do we have a cap on that?
But I would just say,
A judge is going to put a cap on it.
yeah, that and you're entitled to a defense in this country. No matter how many times you break the law. So that's why I'm comfortable with it. I get what you're saying, but
You are always, they get paid monthly. They would get paid anyways. And yeah, they would get paid anyways. It's not by the person. It's not a billable hour. It's a set amount that they would get a month. And I just want to uplift and echo what Eric just said. In this country, you have a right. You should have a right to counsel. You should. You don't get it all the time, and a lot of it is dealing with your money and how much you make, but you should have a right to it. And I think our community is a great place to show folks that it's possible and it should be done and it can be done. I will come back with the data for you all. I'll work with Mr. Nyber to see, I'll work with Mr. Nyber and I'll work with, Judge Miller to see about getting that data and bring it back to you all. And I think we still have time.
Is that a conversation you've had with Judge Miller? Like, could you just put it to her like,
Yeah.
you're the judge and I trust her. So could you tell us what that looks like?
So she came to us last year and gave a presentation and basically said, yes, this is a really good idea. You all should do it. She didn't go into details like what I tried to go into with this memo, but she was just like, there are a lot of instances where she will have a defendant that if they had received just a little advice from an attorney. Right. But the data I'll get for y'all.
And I'm thinking too, like, I know like county library sometimes does like, workshops to help people with things on their record and like the numbers are huge.
Okay, so I have homework. My homework is to reach out to our judge and also I'll work with Mr. Nyber to reach out to our clerk to get that information. But I need direction on the data that you all want. So tell me, what do you want? Are we looking at how many tickets the municipal court disposes of?
Yeah, bandwidth.
Okay.
Particularly those, that category that we discussed. I think that's the critical number.
Yeah.
Because
Okay, take a deal or get offered a deal.
Tell me the relevance of that data.
Deals or not, put in more of a poverty strip, where they're going round and round. When you said that are giving deals, most people are given an opportunity to make it right before they're given the points and just they're given however long it is, maybe it's another court date, maybe they're given driving school, maybe they're given time to go get their license, maybe they're given that opportunity to make it right without an attorney.
my question is, and we're using the word deal. I feel like that's probably not the right word. It's really what your options are, because it's not like we're getting people off, like they're walking out of there. Well, nothing happened. Like they still took some option. Right? I'm assuming so, like, oh, you can have points or fines or some combination or.
They're a higher fine, in my experience, when you agree to that for driving with no insurance. If you agree to illegal parking, that illegal parking ticket is $400 versus the 200 non-insurance.
Is that what we're talking about? Is that what we do?
So,
Confused.
generally speaking, you have all of your tickets. If you get an amendment, you could call generally the judge can amend. The judge either sentences you on let's say it's speeding. So if you're guilty of speeding, you're not guilty of speeding, or she can do what we call suspended imposition sentence, which is you're guilty, but you're not going to get points if you do that. Usually it's driving one thing. If it's an amendment on something like driving while suspended or uninsured, those are, if they're amended, if we amend them to illegal parking. I don't want to say every but in Maplewood, if it's amended to, and actually it's not illegal parking, we amended it's amended to defective equipment. Defective equipment is a minor traffic violation, and it has a limited fine of up to $250 by statute. So if you're getting that amendment, you have a fine ability, or a fine cost that limited to $250. It's a deal.
But it's really just a plea deal. That's what it's a recommendation. The prosecutor has to be the one. So the judge. And for the general parlance, sometimes it's a deal, but it's really a plea deal. The prosecutor has submitted something, you have accepted it, and that's the.
Right.
You're pleading guilty to a lesser crime to avoid.
Right. To bring up that like deal makes it sound like, you know, you're doing some fancy lawyer tricks and walking out the door. And it's like, well, no, there's still a consequence. It's just we've amended what that consequence is.
I think all the data that everyone mentioned would be helpful. Also, if there's any data on how often these types of cases leave municipal court and are appealed to higher levels. Because I think that helps with the scope of the public defender having that ethical obligation to represent without limitation. And if that never happens, then I have less concern about that. Or if it's a very low percentage.
Yes. So even if it's not low, like my experience, I don't want to follow it. When I was a public defender, I would have a case and it was in general sessions, which is municipal court in Tennessee. Excuse me. And if there was like a preliminary hearing, then it went to a higher court. I didn't have to follow it. Someone else took over for me, but we don't have that situation here. And I tell you all that to say, even if we have like a very low amount of instances where this happens, we still don't want them to have to follow it. You see what I mean? I'll get you that information.
No, yeah, I understand. I'm just thinking with what Jackie said about ethical obligation. Like if you're representing without limitation and you start representing someone here, are you obligated to follow them to the next level?
Scope is like, you know, your representation will only cover municipal court, Maplewood's municipal court. This person will not represent you beyond the disposition that you get in municipal court.
We're just writing in the limitations.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Would you still like that information? I'm sorry, Krista. Would you still like that information?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm assuming in just general data privacy and whatnot, that we would have no weather vane on indigent versus not. So I think just overall numbers would be good. I mean, I don't know that we ethically could even try and get to that level of granularity.
Krista, I like, you know, your discussion / idea of we just really, whoever needs the help on those specific tickets gets the help.
Yeah, because I mean, like, again, there's been plenty of times in my life I've been above a threshold for aid, but I'm still in bad shape.
But what did you want to know? I'm sorry.
Is there data that you wanted to know?
No, I was saying I would assume there isn't data on any kind of income brackets for anybody who's,
That's great.
because I don't think we should legally have that.
Okay, I'm cool with that then. And then Chastity, would you repeat what you, actually, can you just, is it okay if you just send me an email of the data that you want me to ask for? Okay. What's been certified? What is that? I'm sorry. Okay. In those 5, in that realm, in that category.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's Jackie, what would happen if a defendant had DWI and a no insurance, or had a DUI in Maplewood and a no insurance? So at what point those limitations would kick in and the attorney would only advise on the no insurance? And
That's the scope. That can be the scope.
So let me ask this way, if someone has like a driving license and is uninsured, you would want them to represent them on the uninsured, but you would not want them to represent them on the driving or the.
So I think you said driving on a suspended at first. Okay, if they had a driving on a suspended and the uninsured, well, let me finish that. Let me finish that. I understand, but let me finish that because it's a good example. Then yes, I would like for them to be represented. If they have a DWI and a no insurance, no. Because really the DWI is that trumps. Yes, absolutely not. So we're not gonna parcel that. We're not gonna cut that in half. We're not touching it.
No, what if it's uninsured plus speeding, or yeah, what if
No, anything. So
that,
correct.
or one or two infractions.
It has to, if it's not, that's it. That's it. You have got to be in the category.
Yeah.
All right,
So I have two matters that I need to seek more data on, and it's how many tickets are in the category that we discussed, and then the other one is how many tickets in that category has been certified to St. Louis County. Can I,
Oh, go ahead.
last question, may I please have a time frame of like how far back you all want to go?
6 months.
3 months? I'll do 6.
Yeah, so you can get a year. Simple math.
And Mayor, I would say, I don't know what the data looks like, but I think for the purposes of how we're looking at scope on this, yes, the tickets, but not any of the scenarios where the other stuff would be present that would disqualify.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have a way to determine if the I don't know what the number is, 6 tickets that we want to focus in on, which I'm very supportive of. I think it's the right way to do it. But are there more than that maybe we're not thinking of? Who'd be the right person to ask that?
Well, probably the judge.
Because the judge would think which ones actually happened, not.
Never in theory, the statutes never occur, but like, what does she see? Does she see those 6 in one? Oh, you guys didn't think of this, because that happens all the time. That's why she might be the person to ask, but if you wanted to dive through all our violations, that's fine too.
no, I was just asking for 3 years. So I know
Okay.
what we've seen, but I do want to just one note, which is that expired time has already been on the right now. So it's a little bit different than the other examples. You may or may not want to use it. Just because it's not. Well, yeah, it's not a quick violation.
It's not even a fine. If
I like to keep it. I don't think it hurts anything.
Okay, so my question is there another violation that is commonly seen that is frequently associated with low income? So I don't have insurance, I don't have my car registered, those kind of things. Is there another one that we missed?
Occupancy.
Mm,
Yeah, that's different.
right.
Those are the main ones. You also have all of the minor violence are the kinds that they would say.
Yeah, I understand the legal connection, but I think what our sort of political approach is to sort out the people who didn't. Well, it's not just the rest of the others, it's the decision making in my head. It's like, you don't decide that I'm not going to be insured. Very few people are driving around there because they're saying, I don't want to bother with insurance. It's usually because you can't afford it, right? So to me, it's like forces outside your control. You can control if you speed or not. I don't have as much.
In my history, I have seen that there are equally as housing issues and housing board, if you've ever been to that night where you get a ticket for your grass. And you gotta pay for that because it's too long, as there are routine violations and types of things. That's a different court.
All right. Thank y'all. I'll come back with the data that you asked for, and we will keep moving this forward. Anything further on this? Hey, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We adjourn. Thank you.